You're such a failure, you can't even have kids. These harsh words from my in-laws pierced my heart. Yeah, they're right, agreed my husband, Ethan. I bit my lip hard, trying to endure this unbearable situation. My in-laws, still looking like they had more complaints, laughed mockingly at me. But then, Ethan suddenly let out a laugh. As he burst into laughter, all the relatives gathered around joined in with loud laughter. Surprised by Ethan and the relatives suddenly laughing, my in-laws' eyes widened in shock. Did everyone hear that? Ignoring my clueless in-laws, Ethan turned to the relatives. The relatives and I nodded in agreement. Huh? Finally realizing they were left out of the loop, my in-laws' faces filled with panic. This was my chance. A chance to fight back against my in-laws, who had tormented and insulted me for so long. I clenched my fists tightly. My name is Natalie. I'm 33 years old and work at a publishing house. As a child, my love for books was sparked by my single mother who used to read picture books to me. Becoming a literary editor has always been my dream, and I am proud to be doing the job now. I've been with the same company since I graduated, initially handling sales and magazine assignments. 3 years ago, I finally made the switch to literary editing. However, in the beginning, I was completely clueless about what to do in literary editing. It was different from working in sales or magazine editing, and I was utterly lost. It was my husband, Ethan, who also worked in literary editing, who came to my aid. Ethan, a senior with 5 years of experience in literary editing, patiently taught me everything I didn't understand. He's incredibly kind to his subordinates and meticulous in his work methods. He even volunteered for the unpopular task of training newbies, a testament to his kindness. We started spending more time together. Naturally, we grew closer. Once, when Ethan invited me to dinner under the pretext of work consultation, we ended up having a great time and got drunk. Our meetings outside of work increased, and eventually, Ethan confessed his feelings for me. Feeling the same way, I was overjoyed and immediately accepted his proposal, marking the start of our relationship. A year later, he proposed, and we happily married. Even after marrying Ethan, I didn't quit my job. Editing is as busy as it sounds, with many working into the night. Even though we start a bit late in the morning, our working hours are significantly longer than other jobs. My mother, living far away, was initially worried, but when I told her how much I loved my job, she supported me, saying, "If you love it that much, keep at it even after marriage or having kids." Ethan felt the same, assuring me, "I understand, we're in the same field. It'll be fine." So, I didn't quit for marriage and continued working as a literary editor with Ethan. Becoming a family with someone I shared interests with and who was so kind made me extremely happy. Little did I know what married life had in store for us. It all started with a phone call. A month after our wedding, I returned home early to prepare dinner and received a call on my smartphone. It was an unfamiliar number. With trepidation, I pressed the call button. Hello? Natalie. Finally, you picked up. I thought you wouldn't answer. I winced momentarily at the sound of my mother-in-law's raspy voice. My in-laws live in a town just 3 stops away from our house by train, relatively close by. Since my mother lives in a distant rural area, I had thought of relying on my in-laws for anything urgent. I've been calling you several times and you didn't answer. Sorry about that. I always switch my phone to silent mode when I get home, so I didn't notice the multiple calls from my mother-in-law. I had only met her twice before, during our pre-marriage introduction and the meeting of both families, and both times she appraised me with a scrutinizing look. That's why I reflexively became averse to her, avoiding any interaction until today. Anyway, Natalie. Do you know about that super popular cake shop near your house's train station? Cake? Oh yeah, it's often featured on TV. Exactly. I need you to buy a cake from there and bring it to me, right now. Now? I looked at the clock. It was 9:12 p.m. A cake shop wouldn't be open at this hour. Besides, if she wanted a cake, she could just go buy it herself tomorrow. Why ask me? I'm sorry, but the cake shop is probably closed now. I can try tomorrow, but I can't promise anything due to my work schedule. While I was mentally reviewing my schedule for the next day, my mother-in-law snapped, "Don't be so stingy. I have a bad leg, that's why I'm asking you. Can't you do this one thing for me?" She suddenly spoke in a commanding tone, and I was at a loss for words. This was the first time I had a proper one-on-one conversation with her. I didn't know she was the type to give orders like this. I can try tomorrow. Just not today, please. I'll let it slide since you're Ethan's wife. Make sure you buy the cake as soon as the shop opens tomorrow. After having her say, she abruptly hung up. What in the world? I was already tired from work, and this unreasonable demand from my mother-in-law only added to my fatigue. Well, as long as I get the cake tomorrow. I resigned myself, and an hour later, I had dinner with Ethan, still in our honeymoon phase. The next day, I left home an hour earlier than usual. Leaving already? Yes. I've got a busy day at work. I see. Take care. Not wanting to worry Ethan, I lied to him a bit. He didn't suspect anything and saw me off. I did as my mother-in-law asked, buying the most popular cake at the station and delivering it to her house. You're late. Did you oversleep or something? She said mockingly to me, who had just brought her the cake. I was dumbfounded by her nerves. No, I bought it as soon as the shop opened. Sorry for being late. Oh, stop it. Don't show me such a gloomy face this early. I'll graciously accept this then. Without a word of thanks, she just took the cake and started to go inside. I called out, "Excuse me. The money for the cake? Money? There's no such thing. You're actively working and earning, aren't you?" After dismissing my request, she slammed the door shut. I stood there, dumbstruck. The cost of the cake wasn't that high. But how could she not even pay or say thanks after asking me to buy it? To make matters worse, she ridiculed me. I felt my heart racing as I realized my mother-in-law's true nature, which I hadn't seen before our marriage. The thought of having to deal with her from now on weighed heavily on me. True to form, after getting her way with the cake, she started ordering me around more often. Sometimes it was to buy a branded wallet at a department store sale, other times to come over and cook. She even went as far as demanding a monthly allowance, which left me exasperated. Ethan and I, both working, lived in a downtown apartment close to the station, where the rent was exorbitantly high. We were struggling as it was, barely making ends meet and saving up. There was no way we could afford to send her money. I just can't afford to send money. Maybe I can bring a cake instead, that might help. Despite my refusal, my mother-in-law kept pestering me with calls, always asking, "Have you sent the money yet?" I had grown to dread her calls, but I didn't want to worry Ethan, so I kept it to myself. This continued, and it's been almost 2 years since we got married. About a year ago, Ethan and I started talking about wanting kids, but there was no sign of it happening. Anxious, I went to a clinic for tests and found out that the fertility issues were on my end. The condition wasn't such that it was impossible to conceive, so after discussing it with Ethan, we decided I would take a break from work to focus on getting pregnant. Trying to conceive was tough and taxing, both mentally and physically. Ethan always encouraged me, saying, "Let's keep going at our own pace." His kindness brought tears to my eyes. With Ethan by my side, I felt I could endure the difficult journey. Just as I was trying to stay positive, my mother-in-law called again. "Natalie, still no baby? I really want to see my grandchild. But I guess it's too much to expect from you. I wonder why Ethan even married you." What? Her cruel words were a shock. Then, she started calling every day, pressuring me about having a child. It wasn't just her, even my father-in-law called with similar comments. If I didn't answer, they'd call back repeatedly, so eventually, I had no choice but to pick up. I braved through their relentless attacks. But Ethan noticed something was off and one day asked me, "Is something wrong?" I had intended to keep my mother-in-law's behavior from Ethan, but his concern made everything I had been holding back spill out. "Ethan, actually." I confessed everything that had been happening since we got married, the demands, the snide remarks from my mother-in-law, and the ongoing harassment about money and having a child. My tears revealed all the pent-up frustration and sadness. That must have been hard. I'm sorry I didn't notice sooner. After hearing everything, Ethan apologized with a look of regret. I saw tears spilling from his eyes. "No, it's my fault for not telling you." "That's not true. I had no idea you were suffering so much. I can't forgive this. It's been a long time since I've been this angry." Ethan was visibly trembling, overwhelmed with emotion. I was so touched that he empathized with my feelings. We can't just let my parents continue like this. I have a plan. A plan? Yes. You know we gather with relatives every New Year's Day, right? We'll do it then. Ethan shared his plan to confront my in-laws. I don't know if it'll work, but let's try our best. Hearing his strong voice, I felt a deep sense of relief. I wasn't alone. I trusted Ethan, ready to face my in-laws. Months passed. During these months, I continued to endure verbal abuse from my in-laws about money and children. I always acted as if nothing was wrong when talking to my mom, but recently she mentioned something concerning. I got a call from an unknown number the other day. My mom, a hardworking single mother, had started showing signs of forgetfulness. I usually half believed her stories, but this time I couldn't ignore it. Digging deeper, I uncovered a shocking truth. That's unacceptable. I will definitely protect you, Mom. Okay. Over the phone, my mom sounded solemn, like a child. My mind was full of the information she shared. And so, life rushed by, and the new year arrived. Every New Year's Day, Ethan's family and relatives gather at his parents' house. This time, I went with Ethan, determined. By the time we arrived at Ethan's parents' house, his uncles and aunts and their families had already gathered, and we were the last to arrive. Oh, Natalie, you're late. Not even helping and just being carefree. Despite Ethan being with me, my in-laws only directed their sarcasm at me. Happy New Year. I hope it's a good one for all of us. Ignoring their sarcasm, I greeted them formally, which seemed to irritate my in-laws even more. Then I helped with the meal preparation and sat down at the table with the relatives. My father-in-law was handing out sweet wine to everyone. But I politely declined to drink it. Then, my in-laws glared at me and said, "What's the matter, Natalie? Got a problem? Not drinking the wine we offered, what kind of daughter-in-law does that?" I hadn't expected to be spoken to like this just for not drinking the wine, and in front of the relatives, I could only bow my head in shame. Eventually, my in-laws spoke again, with a tone of annoyance. Ah, what a disappointment. A failure who can't even have kids. They both exclaimed, their words piercing my heart. Yeah, she's right, agreed Ethan, my husband, siding with his parents. I bit my lip hard, enduring the unbearable situation. My in-laws, still looking like they had more to complain about, laughed loudly and mockingly at me. But then, Ethan suddenly burst out laughing. As he did, the gathered relatives joined in with roaring laughter. Surprised by Ethan and everyone else suddenly laughing, my in-laws' eyes widened in shock. Did everyone hear that? Ignoring my clueless in-laws, Ethan turned to the relatives. Both the relatives and I nodded emphatically. What? Finally realizing they were being left out of the loop, my in-laws' faces filled with panic. This was my chance. A chance to strike back at my in-laws, who had been tormenting and insulting me for so long. I clenched my fists tightly. Mom, Dad, didn't you know? Natalie's pregnant. Pregnant? Their eyes widened in disbelief. Knowing that I was infertile, they had constantly called me, urging me to hurry up and have kids. So, their shock at the news of my pregnancy was understandable. In truth, as Ethan said, I had discovered I was pregnant 3 months ago. Now, at 5 months, I had just entered the stable period of pregnancy. Ethan had apparently messaged his parents about it, but unsurprisingly, they hadn't noticed his message. They're only interested in what they want to do, Ethan had said. But still, to ignore a message from their own son. They had been saying how sorry they felt for Ethan because I couldn't have kids. Their inconsistency and lack of understanding made me sigh in disbelief. Announcing my pregnancy today had been prearranged with Ethan. Moreover, we had taken the initiative to inform the relatives about the harassment I had been receiving from my in-laws and had them on my side. So, the relatives already knew about my pregnancy, leaving my in-laws the only ones out of the loop. Ethan had pretended to side with his parents initially, just to provoke them. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you directly. I've been having a lot of morning sickness and couldn't visit much, I said. My in-laws recoiled in surprise. What's this all about? Hey, why are we the only ones who didn't know? That's so rude. This is what happens when you have a forgetful mother. They complained, blaming me even though they had missed their son's message. But what caught my attention more than being blamed was my mother-in-law's remark. How do you know my mother is forgetful?
Huh?
That's right. Earlier, my mother-in-law had said to me, "You have a forgetful mother." My mom only recently started showing signs of dementia, and I hadn't told anyone but Ethan. It was odd that my mother-in-law knew about it. She shrugged her shoulders for a moment, then defiantly said, "I just thought, considering it's your mom, maybe she's forgetful. But such an excuse doesn't fly with me." I looked at my in-laws and said, "You two scammed my mother, didn't you?" The word scam sent a chill through the room. Looking at them, I could see their faces twitch in panic.
What's this all of a sudden? How dare you accuse us of being scammers? Natalie, I thought you lacked common sense, but this is just too much.
They seemed to think I was bluffing, trying to maintain their composure. I almost pitied them for not being able to admit their guilt. "I have proof. Look." I pulled a piece of paper from my bag. It was a copy of my mother's bank statement. Recently, my mom told me she got a call from an unknown number. I questioned her in detail. Since she's getting forgetful, I was always cautious about someone possibly taking advantage of her. We live far apart, so I don't get many chances to see her. I wanted to help her in any way I could. She told me that someone pretending to be from a credit card company called, demanding payment for an outstanding balance. My mom, with her diminished judgment, believed she really owed money and transferred a large sum to the account they gave her. And it wasn't just a few $100 or $1,000. It was tens of thousands of dollars. I immediately asked her to send me a copy of the bank statement from that time. When I saw it, I felt dizzy. The payee was clearly listed as Mindy Brown, my mother-in-law's name. My forgetful mom hadn't realized she was transferring money to her. "Are you still going to deny scamming after seeing this?" My mom said the credit card company asked for unpaid charges. "But why would the payment go to you, Mindy? That's strange, isn't it?" The relatives were all wide-eyed at my words. My in-laws were trembling. It seemed I had hit the mark. They were panicking, being caught in their scam.
So what? Your mother was foolish enough to be scammed. Just one scam, and you're making such a big deal out of it.
Even now, they refused to admit their guilt. As I was about to speak again, Ethan chimed in. "It's not just once. Mom, Dad, you've done this scamming multiple times. I checked your phones earlier. There were many calls to numbers not in your contacts. Dozens a day. People don't usually call so many unknown numbers. This is proof you didn't just scam once. And another thing," Ethan continued. "I got a bill from some unknown company claiming unpaid charges. I checked and was shocked. I'm listed as a co-signer on loans for you. What were you thinking, making your son a co-signer? You must have been splurging on luxury brands and gambling away money. Then, out of desperation, you scammed. Am I wrong?"
That's...
Ethan's words seemed to hit home as both parents looked guiltily uncomfortable. "And Natalie, you said they called you multiple times, harassing you, demanding you send money. It was all to pay off their debts, right? Do you realize how much she has suffered because of you?" Ethan's voice shook with anger. Tears welled up in my eyes as I remembered all the mistreatment from my in-laws. Just a little more. Soon, I'd have my chance to vent my frustration on them. I bit my lip hard.
That's because I wanted to get along with Natalie.
My mother-in-law desperately tried to justify. "I did errands and shopping for you, saying you had a bad leg. But that was a lie, wasn't it? I was surprised you seemed fine today." My mother-in-law's body twitched again. Ethan, sensing an opportunity for a counterattack, pressed on.
"I'm fed up with your lies. You've been using and ridiculing Natalie. Enough is enough. We're cutting ties with you. It's too late to apologize now. And we'll be reporting the scam to the police."
Ethan, speaking sternly, caused his parents to widen their eyes in shock. This was the first time the usually calm and kind Ethan showed such anger. It must have been the same for his parents.
"What are you saying about calling the police, Ethan? We're family, aren't we?"
They desperately clung to Ethan, but he firmly cut them off. "No, you're not my family. Not when you hurt the people I care about and commit crimes." His parents seemed to collapse on the spot, but finally left the house under the cold stares of the relatives. They probably won't come back today. "Sorry everyone, for all this trouble on New Year's Day. Happy New Year," Ethan said cheerfully, and the New Year's celebration began. We decided not to bring up my in-laws again and just enjoy the start of the new year together. As promised, we reported my in-laws to the police and they were promptly arrested. Their sentencing is yet to be decided. I hope they get the punishment they deserve, including for the harassment they caused me. It turns out their debts amounted to several million yen. Gambling and buying luxury items, they spent money recklessly, so there's no room for sympathy. They had even borrowed money from neighbors, who were exasperated when they talked about it. We apologized on behalf of my in-laws and sold their house to pay off the debts. That was the end of our involvement with them. I went on maternity leave, and Ethan was transferred. It was a good chance to get away from my in-laws. I was excited to start a new life with our child. A year after the child was born, I heard from relatives about my in-laws. They had been sentenced to 2 years in prison with suspended execution. Currently in their probation period, they lost their house to pay off debts and are living in a hotel, working various part-time jobs. They don't deserve sympathy after deceiving people and taking their money. They should work to the bone to make up for their actions. Hopefully, they'll reflect deeply on their upcoming prison time. Ethan, our child, and I were living happily together. No more calls from my in-laws. We were building a new family, laughing together.